Hello and welcome to tonight's Truth Proof live stream. Now, I'd like anybody who can hear me tonight, just say so in the chat, because I know sometimes we have a little bit of a problem with the audio. But if you can hear me, just give us a thumbs up in the chat, and if you can see me, give us a thumbs up in the chat. That'd be great. And I've got to welcome everybody onto the chat this week. So everybody from the UK and around the world who may be tuning in. Thanks for taking the time out and joining us, because I know tonight we've got a great show with a great guest. A guest who a lot of you will already know, but some great stories and some great accounts. Before we go into that, I'm just coming onto the chat and see who's in, and just let's see who's in the chat tonight. Well, Scarflower is doing the moderating tonight, so thank you, Scarflower, for giving your time up tonight. That's great, and she'll be sending questions through from you good people in the chat, and if you can put them questions in capital letters, that would help her. That will help Sky identify them, and she can just send them through to me. Okay, so we have Rod, Gary James, we have Rick Allen in the stream tonight. We have Simon Riley. Alison is in, and she's not very well, she tells me, and I think she's put that in the chat already. Alison, who usually does the moderating, but she is looking in tonight. I've also got just Rocky Newsons and the Revenants. Welcome, the Revenants. And Andy Ross, Ghost Whisperer. I can see there. Kim King is in the chat. And Lorraine Groves, and of course our great supporter of the show, Lee Roscoe's in the chat, and Mally Dodgson. Welcome, Mally. Great to see you in there. So, without further ado, we will just play our little intro, and then we'll bring our guest on. The intro's over. On with the show. Well, I've got to welcome Mr. Paul Sinclair.
Thank you very much, Les. Here we go again, another Thursday night, and yeah, we've got a great guest lined up to speak to tonight. Long overdue, I think. I don't know why I've not asked this guest before, so it might not be the first and only time we have him speaking. So he's a writer, researcher, former editor of UFO Magazine, and you know, some of the older viewers and listeners will remember and know Russ Callaghan. Russ, welcome to Truth Proof.
Thank you very much, Paul. It's nice to be here. Looking forward to this. Speak to some people who we've not met for a long time.
Yeah, it's brilliant, Russ. And I don't want to make you sound too old. I mean, I think we're probably a similar age, but you've been around this subject for a lot of years. Just give us a little bit of background before we get into some of the information and cases you've looked into.
Well, when it all started for me, like a lot of us, as a child, really, there was an interest in the subject. But I remember we were on holiday down south, and my mum's sister lived on the south coast, and we used to go down there for a fortnight every summer, just me, my mum and dad. And we used to take a ride out to Chichester one night during the holidays and go to the cinema. And the film that was on was The Love Bug. So we can date it to about, must be 1967, something like that. So I'd be 8 or 9 years old. And walking out from the cinema, coming home, you had to do everything by train down there. All the villages had a station or a halt. And the old Southern Region electric trains used to run fantastic service. And it's about 15 minutes to Southbourne, where my Auntie Margaret lived. And as we're walking towards the station, looking up a beautiful clear night sky, and I saw this red light in the sky. Now, everybody will tell me it's going to be an aircraft, and yes, it probably was. But the active mind of a kid at that time, there were stars in the sky, but there was this red light going across the sky. And I'm thinking to myself, is that a flying saucer or whatever? And that sort of kick-started everything about the subject to me. 8-year-old, you're not buying magazines and books at that time. But then stuff start coming on TV, You've got your Captain Scarlets and you've got your Fireball XL5 and such like. And the interest just grew and grew. And as I got into my formative years as a young man, I worked on the buses. I worked for Yorkshire Woollen District Transport, which were the old red buses in Heckmondwike, where I lived. And I started as a conductor. I was only 18, 19-year-old when I applied for the job. You couldn't drive till you were 21, but I got a job. The money was fantastic compared to what I was earning working in a shop. And on one particular day, my driver and I, because obviously you're two up, there were quite modern buses. I'm not that old, the driver was up the front with you. He wanted a cab on his own sort of thing. And we were parked up at a place called Russel Top, which, if anybody knows Bradford, it's one of the high points in the city. And it's on one of the main arterial routes between sort of Halifax, Huddersfield, into Bradford. And we came up through Dewsbury, Heckmondwike, Cleckheaton to Bradford. And it was what they called the timing point. So when you got there, you couldn't leave with a certain time on your timetable. Sunday afternoon, 4:45, we were due to leave about 4:50, something like that. And back in the day, got off the platform, stood against the wall, and we're having a chat. Me and the driver were having a cigarette, like you did. And I'm looking out towards the Emily Moor area, because where you are from Russel Top, you can see for miles. And I could see to the right of Emily Moor, to the left of Emily Moor, we'll say. And all of a sudden, something caught my eye. It was quite high up. I couldn't guesstimate it because I knew how high Emily Moor mast was. That was just over 1,000 feet. The clouds were twice as high as Emily Moor. So we say cloud level were about 3,000 feet. And this thing was somewhere between the two. It was a silver spinning disc. That's all I can say. It was a solid object. It was glinting light. The low sun was shining off the underneath of it, and it was definitely rotating. And I'm looking at this for 3 or 4 seconds, and then without word, Paul, push, gone. Straight up. Within a second, it was out of sight, out of mind. That got me going. That really triggered me that, the thing you say.
1980, Russ.
Yeah,
1980.
Yeah, I'm coming to that. Yeah. The thing that, it's one of those things I've always said at conferences to people who have, if you say, I think I've seen a UFO, you probably haven't. Because when you see something that's wrong, there's something that's not ours, you know about it. And of course, as the years go on and you look at what we said there, this was October 1980. Well, 6 weeks later, we've got Alan Gottfried's account of the flying saucer allegedly seen very close to the ground in Todmorden. And let me tell you, Todmerden's 12 miles away from where I was stood. In a straight line, it's that Pennine corridor. It's on its way up towards Lancashire. In a straight line, you've been Todmorden, 12 miles. And we've got the Rendlesham Forest incident, another 6 weeks after that. So within 3 months, there's been 2 very famous sightings, and then one I call my own. And there's a flap of UFO activity. That really starts, the pan boiling, if you like. You're looking for more and more information. And from there, I just kept my nose down, kept looking, kept reading, watched what I could on TV. Obviously, we've got no video recorders in them days. The day the VHS video recorder came into the house was a great step because you could buy videotapes, you could get them from abroad, whatever. Then when you get Sky Television, when the 30 or 40 channels to fill, they have to fill it with something. And you tend to get a lot of these lower budget documentaries, but it brought the subject to life and it brought a big interest in the subject, of course. The X-Files coming round, But some of the programs I remember, Paul, and I don't know with you in mind, things like Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious Worlds.
Yeah.
They used to fascinate me. I mean, do you remember a three-parter called Riddle of the Skies? That was
actually,
something that, Channel 4 did that, and it was one of those. It was over 3 weeks, and you were waiting for the next episode because they really covered the subject well.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of one of contributors, a British guy. I can't think of his name. Spohr. What it's Spohr?
Yeah, David Spohr. David Spohr stood on his rooftop with his camera.
Yeah.
We covered David in the magazine. Now, he fell into a little bit of disrepute, did David, and through no fault of his own. And I'm sure if he's still around, I've not heard anything of him.
He's not. He's passed away, Russell. But,
right.
but I'm happy for you to fill people in on David Spohr, because you'll know more about him than me. So just first of all, give us a little bit of background on the man himself, because there'll be a lot of people who've skipped a few decades that will have no idea about this guy.
Well, David was a photographer, and he took his camera work quite seriously. And when he started into the video game, he bought quality equipment. You know, he didn't go and buy the cheapest camcorder he could find in Curry's. He was actually using a good old stalwart Canon with interchangeable lenses and everything. And this was a good, documentary makers were using this in the day. And David had been seeing stuff, filming bits and pieces, but he got one or two really convincing shots. And I'm sure if you look on YouTube and dig deep, you'll find Riddle of the Skies. The actual.
And are we talking about the triangles? The shots that. Yeah.
There's one shot of a triangle there that's hard to believe it's anything else. That he's got it. It's in focus. It's not an out of focus aeroplane. The object's in focus coming towards you, and he films it for UFO sighting terms a considerable time. There's a good 20-30 seconds of this thing. Now, David got involved with a company to make a documentary prior to the Riddle of the Skies stuff, and when it fell into disrepute, they were caught out where the filmmakers, not David's filming, but the filmmakers adopted one of the shots and put some background into it and claiming it as true, and got David to agree with them on camera that this is how it happened. That got out to the people around the subject, and that was it. You know what I mean? His credibility was blown out the window. You fake one, you fake them all. And it was a crying shame, because, as I say, if you can find Riddle of the Skies online, have a look at it. It's well worth a watch.
Do you know something, Russell? I can probably do better than that, because somebody a few years ago sent me a box, and I've got quite a lot of David Spohr's work.
Right.
Seriously.
You're interested to have a look at some of that, will you?
Yeah. And there's a great pile of it with another guy who's offered it me all. He were given it after David passed away, because they knew that it's a guy who used to research for Timothy Good.
Yeah.
And this guy, incidentally, called David as well, sent me some of the information. And I never really chased it up, but I knew exactly who you were talking about. And it's brilliant to have you on, Russ, because, I think people think that I've just appeared in the last 5 or 6 years, but I've been involved in it for years and years. But you've been away. You've kind of been away from it for, I wouldn't say forever, but for a decade at least.
I've been in the background, yeah.
You've been in, and people really, if they did a bit of digging, they'd find that you were quite prolific as regards the work that you were looking into. You travelled all over the world, really, didn't you? Looking at cases.
Yeah. One thing I can say categorically that I've got on Nick Pope is I was paid to research UFOs.
Yeah, right. There you go. So, but before, no, it's fine. So before we jump into some more UFO cases, can I? First of all, you touched on the red light in the sky when you were 8 years old. Let's just draw you back a little bit further. Let's go to I don't know.
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
I know
when
where
you were
you're going.
5 or 6 years
I know where
old.
you're going. Yeah.
5 or 6 years old.
Yeah.
4:40-ish. Sorry,
Yeah.
4:10 in
Yeah.
the morning.
4
Tell us
in the
about
morning.
it.
When I was 4 or 5 years old, we lived in a place called Liversedge, again, Edmund-Wyke area, Firth Cliff Estate, number 10, Firth Cliff Parade. Now, my dad was an hard-working Yorkshireman. He worked for Rockware Glass. He worked 3 shifts, morning, noon, and night. My mum worked in a bread shop for all her working life. She worked in retail. At 5-year-old, I'm an only child, always have been. When my dad were on nights, I'd sometimes end up being in their bedroom. This particular night, and it's something that's stuck with me for the last, 59, 60 years now. And I covered this in a podcast I did, a bit of a special for Halloween, looking at some of the other paranormal stuff that I feel have been associated with in my life. And as this goes, in my mum and dad's bedroom was a 3-drawer chest of drawers, and on top of this was their alarm clock. Now, we're talking 1963-ish, 1964. And this alarm clock had a little red-orange neon light behind the face, so it glowed. You could see it in the dark. I wore glasses from being 4-year-old, so the glasses were at the side of the bed. And all of a sudden, I wake up, I can hear strange sound. It sounded like chatting, singing, giggling, but it was, you couldn't make out exactly what it was. You couldn't hear any words or anything like that, but it was just this background noise of chatter and music. No musical instruments, but like kids singing. And I'm looking at the clock without my glasses on, and I can see some shadow flickering around it. So feel for my glasses and put my glasses on. And as I'm sat here, honestly, I looked at that clock and I could see 3 or 4 little figures dancing around the clock. I'm thinking, as a 4 or 5-year-old kid, what are these? Are they fairies, pixies, what have you? And then the next thing I know, my dad's waking me up and giving me a bit of a telling off for going to sleep with my glasses on. So that's the only thing I know that I'd woke up and put my glasses on to have a look at them was because my dad was giving me a rollicking for going to sleep with my glasses on. And that stuck with me, Paul, all my life.
It's so unusual, that one, Russ, isn't it? When you talk, there's a burial mound close to where we live here, Willie Howe. Yeah. And people talk about seeing fairies and elves and hobs. And what do you think you saw? Because once again, people listening to this, great researcher Russ, but he's also very skeptical, and he always looks inside out for the earthly explanation, as we all should do. But he really goes to town on it. So what makes this different?
What makes it different? I saw it with these.
But
I actually saw it with these. What could it be? Could we have
rationalize, though? But Russell, rationalize. Imagine that somebody's telling you this story.
Yeah.
And you, what would your reaction be if you'd never seen it?
Dreaming. Dreaming.
Yeah.
But like you, Paul, like anybody who's listening, you dream, you forget about your dreams. Mm-hmm. Your dreams go, don't they? There are times in your life there might be the odd one dream that not recurs, but you remember.
Yeah.
I have a thought that something comes to me regularly. When I was a little kid, we used to go to Roundy Park for a day out, which from where we lived were 2 buses from Leeds. Let me tell you, it wasn't the easiest thing to get to with no car. But they used to have an open-air swimming pool and a paddling pool. And I can remember time and time again, this comes back. Don't step on the black bits. Now, there were black tiles and white tiles in the pool bottom. And it was, don't step on the black bits. And that's something, it just comes back to you, right? It's a memory that's there. That's the truth. It's not a dream. It's the truth. And I can also remember my dad had bought me a little pond yacht, only a small thing. And for the keel, you used to have to put an old penny in the bottom of it just to keep it straight up. And that, again, is one of these things that comes back to me. And the little people round the clock is one of them things
just
back to me.
Just before we leave them then, Russ, what were they dressed in? It's fascinating.
Can't tell you. Shadows. There were shadows, Paul.
Okay.
The clock, can you imagine a dim lit orange face? It was a clock with a face about that big. Analog. We didn't have digital clocks in them days. It was a pinky, beigey coloured case. It was sat on the top of the dresser, the chest of drawers. It was dark. There was no other light in the room, but these were shadows going across the clock, and just being able to make them at the side of it.
So, what about other family members, Russ? Has anybody else got? No, I don't mean the little people. I mean, have they got any experiences?
No, nothing that my mum and dad ever talked about. There was one thing I did cover in my Halloween special about my dad. I would be about 18, 19 years old, and we were walking down Cemetery Road. We lived at Longfield Road at the time, which was about a quarter of a mile out of Edmund Town Centre. And we're walking down the road. And I could always remember it as a kid. My dad used to cross over the road. And as you crossed over, there was nothing on this side of the road. You're going over a railway bridge. No houses and a very small footpath. But when we got to these two old big stone houses, my dad used to cross over. And it wasn't until I got to sort of 18 years old. And we were walking down. We were going to the club for a drink. Because I used to ride my motorbike everywhere at the time. You know what I mean? It was an unusual thing for me and my dad to be out walking together. And I said, Dad, I've remembered this. Why do you always cross over there? He said, don't go near that house. I will not go near that house. I said, why? What's the matter? Oh, I'm not telling you. Can't tell you. I said, well, tell me. I want to know. He said, something happened a long, long time ago. I won't go in that house. And to his dying day, I never got it out of him.
Right.
But something had upset him. That's all I can say.
In reality, it could have been another bloke.
Anything.
Or it could have, that's
yeah, it could have been anything. It doesn't have to be paranormal or anything like that. But it certainly affected him. Yeah, go on.
So jumping away from that then, so you were interested in UFOs, you've been interested from an early age, you've had your sighting at 18. How did you start in the investigation? How did that come about?
Well, the thing came at good old Quest International, which was the forerunner to UFO Magazine, which was the Yorkshire UFO Society, which Philip Mantle will talk about when you talk to Philip, myself, Graham Birdsall and Mark, his brother, set up the Yorkshire UFO Society, along with Philip was involved and one or two more people from the past, just as a group of people who were interested. It got to the point where they were making a newsletter. The newsletter evolved into a magazine stapled together from a Gestetner printer, and the neighbours used to complain like hell about Mark Birdsall. He lived on the 11th floor of a council flat, and believe you me, they managed between them to get this Gestetner printing machine up in the lift, up into Mark's front room, and it was an electrified one. It was a motorised one. And Mark could be there at 2 o'clock in the morning, printing stuff out, and the neighbours used to go absolutely potty. That's by the by. But that's how you did things, you know, from little acorns, didn't it? You start these things. And they used to hold meetings in Leeds once a month under the banner of Quest. And I used to go. And they were fascinating. They get speakers from, even then, you know, you get the odd international speaker who've been doing something somewhere and agreed to come over for a few hours on the Sunday afternoon to Leeds. And they were paying a company in Bristol, I won't name them, to film all these events, and it was costing an absolute fortune. and the production side of it, the great researchers, and if they're here today that tell you they didn't have the technical side of things, you know, they relied on everybody else. And I sort of said to Graham, I said, look, I actually film for a living as part of my job. I have a full-time job and I have a second string to my bow. And that, you know, Paul, I've been involved with rugby league for 30 years, working for all the big ones, Leeds Rhinos, etc. I work for Bradford Bulls now, and I've done for the last 9 years. I've got all the equipment that says, look, I'm happy to come to your meetings. Let's start having a look at doing it right, and I'll advise you on what sort of equipment I think you need for your projector and your sound and everything. And we just struck off like that, and that was it. I mean, I was never away from Graham, and then the magazine came along. UFO Magazine was actually put to press in the very early 90s, I believe it was. Tony Dodd was involved at the time. A young lad called Mo, he was in the background when Mo, what people didn't realise about Mo, he was actually a pilot of a nuclear submarine. And he was involved in UFO Magazine as it started off. And as it grew, I started doing more and more bits. And then a part of my life that's gone now because I'm divorced, but I actually married one of Graham's stepdaughters.
Right.
And we've got Katie now, who's 21. And it became a family thing, you know. And through the magazine, as it grew and grew, the interest just roller coastered during the 90s up to the 2000s. And, you know, everything was UFO related. We were getting invited all over the place. It's been a real privilege, privilege.
You know, from just talking there, I can see 3 or 4 questions, and I'll probably forget 3 of them. But obviously, I'd like to talk a little bit about Graham Birstall at some point, before we end today. But just what crossed my mind, because you said you were entered a UFO group. I remember being in Yorkshire UFO Society. Yeah. People like Joe Dormer were in it, and you'll remember Joe. And do you think what we're doing now, tonight, and what loads of other people do you think it's killed the UFO groups? The actual face-to-face meetings?
There's something in that, Paul, isn't there? But let me tell you now, if Graham was sat here on this tonight, he would be buzzing if he knew he could do this. You know, with Graham, the publishing of the magazine, let me tell you, when Graham passed away, I looked after the magazine for the next...
Russell, before you get into that then, once again, just for our listeners who've skipped a decade or so, let's a background on Graham Birstall and just what he represented to British ufology back in the day, please.
Back in the day, Graham was the #1 go-to person for the subject. He didn't know everything, but he found out. The thing about Graham was he had a personality that was just what the media wanted. He was media friendly. He was a wonderful voice. He could speak fluently for hours without any prompting, you know, without any notes. He knew his subject. He could talk to MPs. He could talk to peers of the realm. He could talk to people who were just seen a UFO. What do I do? He was that kind of guy. Whenever you went to a conference with Graham, whether he was putting it on or he was speaking somewhere, everybody went to see Graham. And he had a smile and a word and a hug for everybody. He loved the subject were in through and through. And what I was trying to say was, you know, the business side of it, publishing a magazine, it was fantastic in the early days. It just sold tens and tens of thousands. And financially, it was quite viable. But then what happens in that industry, just to put people in the picture, if you've sold 40,000 magazines in month 1, they expect you to sell 40,000 or 42,000 in month 2.
Yeah.
So you do your print run. Your print run's not expensive. You know, the first 1,000 are the expensive ones, and then everything else is that bit cheaper. But what happens, you get into the people like W.H. Smith and Menzies, they control the magazine business as was. So they'll say, no, we want 50,000. So you have to print 50,000 magazines. Then at the end of month 3, they'll say, oh, we only want 48 this month. But at the end of month 4, they'll send you back 10,000 magazines. So you've paid for them, and you've lost that money. So it becomes very much, so you were relying on an agent, and we had an agent who were a fantastic guy, based in London, and he used to manage that side of things for us. But he got very, very different. What I'm trying to say is, if Graham was here now, he'd still be doing it.
Yeah.
Didn't do it for the money. He'd be doing something like this to keep the subject alive. And you know, there are people out there on YouTube making money. Tell me how they do it. I don't know. You need to do something stupid like put £9.99 on a bottle of pop, like they've been doing with this Prime drink, whatever, and getting millions of views on TikTok, and they're making money. You know, we've got a subject here that we've got thousands and thousands of hours of information for people. We've got researchers all over the world who've done their little bit. Some have done a lot more than others, but some have got their little snippet of information that means so much to what you're looking for in this subject, you know? And I just think Graham would absolutely love doing this, being able to do this from home.
Yeah, so that kind of led me on to what I was going to say. So I was going to say, what do you think he would have thought of the subject, how it's moved on today, and the way people are accepting or more accepting of the reality of what we're looking into?
Yeah, like, I mean, at the time, obviously the internet was in its infancy, really. We're talking 2000, you know, which seems like modern times, but the internet was way slower than it is now. There wasn't as much stuff on there. The facilities to do this sort of thing were quite expensive or prohibitive. But Graham knew that the internet was eating into the magazine business, and knew that the internet was really the place where the subject would either live or die. And of course, even back in the late 90s, when the internet was new, 2 subjects used to top the hit lists on all the search engines, and those 2 subjects were pornography and UFOs. And that's what people were looking at. You know, the internet was made for this, absolutely made for this. But then, of course, we've got all the abilities from people becoming armchair producers. It's so easy to hoax, photorealistic, you know, programs doing models for you and whatever, superimposing. Back in the day, to hoax a photograph was hard work. Not now. You know, it's so easy. You get an app on your phone to do it for you, can't you?
And it's a real double-edged sword, that, because now if anybody films or takes a photograph of the real deal, they're always going to get it. It's CGI. It's been photoshopped. So
all these things that's on the net that you see every day, you know, they're taking the humanity out of the subject, because, like you, I want to see the person who's taking the photograph. I don't just want to see a quote from somebody saying this, that, and the other. I want to see him look in his eyes or look in their eyes and see what you get. And you know that you can tell the real ones when you see them. But you know, there are some clever people out. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Honestly, it's fascinating, and it's tonight. It's taken our live stream in a different direction. It's great to talk about. I've met Graham Bursell twice.
Right.
No more. But lovely guy. Great to talk about people like Graham, and for people that have never had any dealings with him and yourself, to bring this back to life, kind of thing. So let's stay with that. And do you want to talk about any of the notable cases that have sort of stayed with you and that you've followed over the years, that are some of them that aren't prominent? They don't have to be the sort of big names.
No, I'll bring something in that people might like. People might think, okay, this is wrong, whatever. It's a loose edge to a big story. We're going to talk about Alan Godfrey, right?
Okay.
And I'm not going to talk about the flying saucer, Alan Godfrey. I'm going to talk about the bit that all the filmmakers, all the researchers, all the storytellers start his story when in July, I think it was, of 1980, Alan came across a body. Alan was on patrol as a Bobby did in them days. He was on his beat. He got a call from a local coal yard owner to say that I've got a dead body in my yard. So Alan was first on the scene. This, of course, was Zygmunt Adamski.
Yep, yep.
Now, so many people have teamed up that Zygmunt again. He must have been put there by aliens. He was laid on the coal heap. And then you look at the reconstructions from some of the programs, especially the Americans. He's not on a coal heap. He's on a slag heap, a mountain of coal like you would be in Wales. This was a corral where the coal wagons came in, put the sacks on the wagon, and took the coal. It was about 6 foot off the ground. Okay, at his peak, it'd be 6 foot high. And yes, Zygmunt was sprawled on this. Now, Zygmunt had gone missing on the Sunday. He lived in Tingley. It's amazing this because Philip has probably told you this, or if you know, I'll just give you a little sideline.
I'm familiar with it, but it's great. We want to hear it.
Philip Mantle, his father, worked down the pit. Zygmunt Adamski worked down the pit with Philip Mantle's father. Right? Philip Mantle lives in Tingley, across the road from where Zygmunt Adamski lived. That's how close-knit it was. Anyway, that's by the by. Even James Turnbull, who was the pathologist at the time when they'd done the work on Zygmunt Adamski and had this the hearing. What people don't know is that the pathology report was done, but Zygmunt had gone. They got him out of the country because he was Polish. He wanted to be buried in his own land. And within days, and even Gary Esseltine can back this one up because he's seen the reports, he'd gone within days of being found. That's by the by. To try and put an end to the alien thing, you can believe this or not, but we'd always had suspicions that there was some family involvement in this with Zygmunt. And Mark Birtsell, Graham's brother, who used to edit and produce the Unopened Files, was doing a story on the mysterious death of Zygmunt Adamski. And we got a phone call from a family member, from a relative, after the story had gone out. And he said, look, let me put you in the picture. What happened? He said, we hear all the stuff about aliens and flying saucers. He says, what a load of rubbish, he says. Zygmunt Adamski came from Tingley to Todmorden to cause problems at a wedding. There was a family wedding going on, and Zygmunt didn't agree to whoever were getting married. He wasn't happy about it. And he kicked off at the house, and the family literally locked him in a shed till the wedding had taken place. They put him in the shed, locked him in, and they've gone to the wedding.
Right.
When they've come back, Zygmunt was dead. Zygmunt had been trying to get out of the shed. Apparently, there was an old car battery on a shelf.
So this attributes to the marks.
The battery had fallen on him. This is the unknown fluid that was found. It was battery acid. And the family member said, yeah, the family moved him. They did the other thing, they moved him in the middle of the night and put him in the coal yard. Believe that or believe that not, it's a lot easier to believe than being abducted by aliens from Tingley and dropped in Todmorden. And there was a family feud going on at the time, and all that's left behind, you know what I mean? And it was a researcher, I think, I'll name him, it was Nigel Mortimer who linked the two together and decided that, you know, it were the same aliens that Alan had reportedly seen.
Yeah,
so that's one of the cases that I've always had a keen interest in. Following up on Alan's sighting.
So Alan Godfrey's sighting, first of all, just if you're going to touch on this, give us a bit of a background on the sighting then, Russell, please.
So then early morning, I can't remember the exact date, but it was at the end of, it was November 1980. again, if you watch the documentaries on this, you'll see Alan driving up this long country road and all of a sudden coming across this flying saucer, hovering over the ground. There's a big poof, white light, and then Alan, it's gone. And Alan's 100 yards further up the road than he thought he was. Let's put things into perspective. Todmorden, if you've ever been, small market town, it's in Yorkshire, Lancashire tried to claim it. It's right on the border, really, you know, in the Oldham postcode area, I think, as well. Now, as you go through Todmorden, Burnley Road, there's a railway bridge, comes across you, then you're on Burnley Road going up the hill. 50 yards after the railway bridge, 100 yards after the railway bridge, is Todmorden Police Station, right? 500 yards past Todmorden Police Station, maybe 700 yards, is Fernley Road. Now, Alan was called, a member of the public had rung in early morning to say there were some cows on the loose on Fernley Estate, which is Fernley Road. Can somebody go and investigate? Well, Alan was driving towards Fernley Road. As far as the story goes, there's a little bit of it. Did he go into it or did he not? But no. If you go past Fernley Road, another 300 yards is the bus stop, right? Now it's chucking it down with rain. And this is where Alan sees what he says, for his own words, he thought it were a bus. He thought it were a bus that were parked up because even under the hypnosis that they did with him, Harry Harris, Jerry Randalls, put him through regression hypnosis, the first thing he says on them tapes is, it's a bus, right? Take that out of the equation. He's looking at this thing, he then realizes that, oh, it's not a bus, it's a flying saucer. Or it's an object, it's spinning off the ground. There's this big whirlpool, dry area of road where he said he saw it. That's intriguing, that bit. There were leaves pushed to the side and what have you. I might have an answer for that as well. But then he forgets, you know, the flash of light and everything's gone. Now, Alan says he couldn't get in touch with the police station on his radio. He couldn't get in touch on his car radio or his pocket radio. Now, I can understand the car radio because that would probably go to Halifax and then be repeated back to Todmorden because these were big broadcasters. But the local radio, that went to the police station. 800 yards down the road. It's not miles and miles away. You know, if they weren't for the bend in the road, you could see the police station from where he was.
But I'm not disproving what you're saying. You've looked into this, but in defence of Alan, I don't know Alan.
Oh, go on.
So we've got an alleged UFO incident.
Yeah.
And how many times do we hear about all types of communication, car radios go off,
Yeah.
Engines stop?
Correct.
Could that have been the case?
Could it? Could it? Yes, it could. But we're at the point where the whole story got blown out of all proportions for me by the media, by the press. Now, Alan's own book is the one to read on the subject. He'll tell you that. But there are so many things, Paul, about the Alan Godfrey case that stack up on the... Not that Alan's telling lies. What happened to Alan happened to Alan. In his mind, whatever it was, whether he's had, I don't have to say seizure, that makes him sound like an invalid, but one of them little brain flashes, something's gone off. Just for that moment in time, he was tired, it was the end of a night shift, he was actually getting ready to go home when he had to go look for these cows. So, you know, the pressure's on, the rain, it's raining, I'm trying to get hold of people. I don't know. The other thing that people forget, the shape of the object that Alan drew, classic UFO. But if you look on my website, if you look wherever, Todmorden, I think it's Wilkinson's Fabrications was the factory. They were a manufacturer, the only manufacturer in this country of the Futura House, which is a flying saucer shaped, prefabricated fiberglass building that stands on 3 legs. Right? Now, They only made one under license at this particular factory, but the council bought it. Todmorden local council had it as a ticket office outside the old medical centre. Now, what I'm saying, I'm not saying that's what Alan saw. What I'm saying is Alan had seen that and seen that time and time again. And that impression of that thing, when he thought he'd seen a flying saucer, he basically drew the Futura house.
Got you. Okay.
Are you with me? So that was impregnated in there. Now, ruined his career in the police force. He's never changed his story on Alan, and he'll berate me for this, and we've never fallen out over it, but he still insists, and I have to go with him, that in his mind, what happened is what he said. He doesn't go with the hypnosis. He's unsure about that. He said, because there was a lot of time between me seeing my UFO and the hypnosis taking place.
Yeah.
And I'd read a lot and I'd seen a lot, and that could have influenced.
That could influence the hypnosis, yeah.
But once again, the very first thing he says under hypnosis is, "It's a bus."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's one of them.
Well, that's good, and we'll come to another UFO account in a moment. But let's just go to Les, and we'll see. Are you okay to answer some questions, Russ?
Yeah, sure, fire away.
Yeah, we'll see whether we've got some questions. And thanks a lot, Russ. Great so far.
Yeah, and that was a great account of Alan Godfrey's sighting there, Russ. I'd just like to put a question in there myself, Russ.
Yeah, sure.
Alan also said in his statement that he said there were leaves swirling around underneath the craft.
Oh, yes.
He also said when he went back to have a look.
Yeah.
That the ground was dry because you said it was raining. The ground was dry under that spot where he thought he'd seen this craft.
And so what do I think that was?
Well, basically,
yeah. Well, I'll put it to you. What do you think what might have done that?
A vehicle parked there and it's moved.
A road sweeper.
All right.
With flashing lights, going round and round and round.
Yeah. So we'll move to some questions just in case people think that, yeah, all good. So, Les.
Sorry, Les.
No worries. Right, okay then. I've got to thank everybody for coming on to the stream tonight. It's really, really appreciated. Some great supporters on there, I've noticed. Sorry I didn't get to read all your names out at the top of the show. And Sky has sent me some questions through. And one of the questions is from Andy Ross, the Ghost Whisperer. What does Russell think about the state of British ufology at the moment? Now, I know you've kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, aren't you, Russ? Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you've all been around it long enough, you two guys, and British ufology, like every other country's ufology, is in the same boat that it's always been in. It's full of people with genuine intent. It's full of people who work tirelessly to get to the bottom of the subject for little or no reward. And it's full of people who put up goalposts and knock you down and take the mickey out of everything you do. So, although we've got the technology nowadays from what we had 25 years ago, we're still in the same boat. There's believers and non-believers. But in the believers, there's also believers who won't be swayed into anything else, that I've seen a UFO and that's it. And they're the dangerous ones, really, because you can never change their minds. Their mind's made up. And there's quite a few people out there, along the mainstream researchers, who are absolutely adamant that what we're dealing with is extraterrestrial visitation. We're not saying that. I'd love it to be true, and I'm sure Paul would love it to be true. But there's a million reasons to what things could be, might be. And one of them is they may be extraterrestrial. I'd love that to be the case. Are we seeing it now with the Tic Tac stuff? It's all a little bit military for me. But again, fascinating around the military stuff that we'll come to later on, because, that's always the secret stuff that people use are going to be the UFOs of tomorrow. they've been the UFOs of yesterday, and we know that. So yeah, I think we're in the same boat basically, Les.
Yeah, you know, and you missed one of the full ofs off, and I'll not swear, but it's full of researchers who talk BS.
Yeah,
and we're not and that sort of brings the subject down with the people that we're wanting to convince that there's some reality to what we're talking about. You know,
excuse me, naming people.
No, I'm not going to do that.
I don't know, but let me tell you something now. I'll avoid his name, but you'll guess who it is when I'm talking about it. And I'm not talking about Nick Pope. Talking about an American researcher who claims everything has been told to him. He claims he's been spoken to by presidents and everybody who's important in the world. He knows about free energy. He knows about everything else. He charges people for everything he does. You want him to speak at your conference, it'll cost you $10,000 plus all his other expenses. He's registered as a charity. If you look into his background, he's registered as a charity. He pays no tax on the money that he earns. And people are bowing down to this guy like a god. Well, let me tell you, 23 years ago, this person, and I'm not naming him for obvious reasons, was in Graham's back garden. He was one of our speakers, along with two other colleagues of some repute, if you like. And again, I'm being careful. I cannot name them. They know who they are. Down at the bottom of the garden, what were they doing? Yeah, let's have a party at Graham's house. All right? These people, the poison to the subject.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't give them the reek off my you-know-what. Anyway,
excellent.
That said.
Great answer. Thank you. We'll have another question. Thanks, Russ. Seriously, appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Russ. I'm just going to mention this. It's from Andrew Sheehan, and he's saying, really, could you please give a shout out to a new listener called Bob in the Netherlands? So welcome, Bob, if you're still
Bob in the Netherlands.
with us. Yeah.
Just while we're on with the Bob, Les, it's Bob Brown's birthday, so happy birthday, Bob.
Happy birthday, Bob.
And on another note, a regular contributor to the show, Pat Adams writes, not very well, so hope you're feeling much better soon, Pat. And I'll leave it to Les now to ask us a question.
Okay, yeah, and let's have a look then. Does Russell, this is from Alex Thompson, does Russell think sometimes visual UFO activity is deception by another form of intelligence? Good question.
It's a good question, isn't it? You know, let's look at it in a way that I've thought about this in the past, that if we had such a thing as a universal translator, would it be direct connection with the human brain? Now, I'm no professor, no doctor, but this thing to me says that, for instance, whatever language I'm speaking, if I want to make an action, I want to open the door. I say English, I'm going to open the door. But in every other language, does it trigger the same neurons up here? Do they read exactly the same? You know, I want to scratch my head. Does it do the exactly same in everybody's language? So if that was the case, if something with advanced technology, and we get into the thing now where we're helping blind people to see by putting direct information into the brain, not pictures, but digital, you know, computer type signals into the brain to give people some sort of vision. So if this thing is as advanced as it's going to have to be to get here, have they got that facility, if you like, to say, I know, we'll make him think it looks like a double-decker bus, for instance, and get that into your head and you're seeing a double-decker bus. It's like the old hypnotist, isn't it? On the stage, you know, you're a typewriter, stop when I tell you, and this sort of thing. There's something in that sort of deception would have to be at this level. It would have to be, you know, at the brain level.
It's a great answer, that, Russ. You know, good way of thinking that through. Honestly, I agree entirely. I've thought on those lines myself. I'll keep it brief because it's about you and these listeners.
Yeah.
When I wrote Night People and I saw these beings as a child, I turned away in fear, and when I turned back, they stood in front of me. Not the picture from my mum and dad's wedding album, but the people.
Right.
How does that work? As a little boy, I'd looked at that wedding album, and it's all. And I wrote in the book, it's almost like they've flipped through your brain.
Yeah.
Like looking for
These
something.
people make me feel safe.
Yeah. So
it's like
I related to that.
Really quickly. Going to the paranormal side of things. I remember a friend of mine's wife had been to one of these evenings of psychic entertainment, going to see a spiritualist.
Yeah,
they're doing the clubs, the big act. And she was taking it all as a little bit of a joke sort of thing. Didn't know what to expect. And when she come home, Graham, not Graham Birdsall, but Graham, her husband, said she was absolutely ashen. She was really shook up by what had happened. And I said, well, what had happened, Graham? He said, well, she got a message, allegedly from her mother. And her mother was saying, I don't like it in the dark. I can't see. And she'd taken that to mean that, hang on a minute, her mother's photograph was in a drawer, shut away. It wasn't out on display. Now, and she felt so guilty about that. But it's that thing, isn't it, that like you just said there, that these things, I know, those people on that wedding photo you feel safe with.
Yeah.
You've seen this thing that scared you, but yet these people and you're all right with them. So it's put this in your mind that, fascinating.
Yeah, I like the way you put it across, honestly. But are we doing more questions, Les, or are we going? We've got an hour left.
Yeah.
So
I've just got one thing to pick up on something. Just wind the tape back a little bit here. When we was talking about photographs and video, and where nowadays it's can be manipulated.
Yeah.
I think we forgot to add in there that there's artificial intelligence what can do it in live real time.
Oh yeah.
3D, if any 3D scan exists of you as a person, right, that can be inserted in real time into a situation, a scenario that you want involved in.
Oh yeah, this what do they call it? Deep faking, isn't it? Is that the term they use?
Is that what they use? Deep faking.
Deep fake, where you can literally put anybody anywhere. If you've got a little bit of information, it's absolutely frightening. It's like, the way the technology's gone. A good friend of mine and somebody I worked with in the rugby league who very sadly suffering from motor neuron disease is Rob Barrow. Yeah. And before Rob got too ill, he had to do a series of speeches, paragraphs, to this company who were devising a speech pad for him. Now, we didn't say every word in the English language. He had selected words and
but it's gathered enough.
It's got enough there to work on now, and it speaks for him, and it speaks fluently, and it doesn't sound like the old robotic ones. And bless you, Rob, I love you to bits. And it's tragic what's happening there. But Rob can speak by that, and that was artificial intelligence that's built it up.
I didn't think we'd be talking about Rob Burrell, but what a fabulous guy.
Yeah.
So, Les, another question,
I've just got to say, well, I've no more questions. I know I've got a question from Lorraine Groves. So I'll ask that one at the question, Lorraine, if you don't mind.
Okay.
For tonight. And I've just got to, we're just going through a little bit of housekeeping now, Paul. I know that everybody can see on the stream that you do have a website, www.truthproof.uk. If you can tell people what they can do when they get there, Paul.
Yeah, well, we'd welcome, myself and Don Lodge, we'd welcome your reports. If you want anonymity and you've got something to tell us, something you've seen, it doesn't have to be just UFO related, then please send it us, and Don will make sure that they get on the website. I'll definitely call just about everybody. I've got a folder full of reports and messages from people, and I'm slowly getting round to them. I've spoke to some brilliant people in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So truthproof.uk, you can get the books there, and you can also get the Kindles on Amazon or the books off on eBay. And do you have a website, Russell?
Yes, indeed I do. It's quite simple. UFO Russ, UFORUSS.co.uk.
Excellent. And are you going to be making yourself more available?
I mean,
Yeah.
I keep updating the website. There's a blog on the bottom of it, so bits and pieces go on there. Like, you know, it's a long-winded job with the websites, but I've put a few of the old documentaries on there that you can download and watch. You don't have to go searching for them. And just keeping up to date with what's happening, really, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. I know there's always tells from Les, is there?
Yeah, that's brilliant. And just before we move on, Paul, I think I remember last week's stream that you mentioned, you put a call out for people who want to maybe help you in your quest to organising some of these reports, etc., etc. Can you just give people an update of where you got up to on that?
Yeah. I sort of spoke about that without giving it as much thought as what I should have done. We all need help. And it's great to have the help. You know, I get help off Les, Chris Turner. I've got amazing help of Sky in chat, who's moderating, and Alison and Don Lodgewick website. I think what I meant was, and I think what I ought to have said last week, from a more scientifically based background, because it's okay, me as a layman, bloke who's knocked nails in wood all his life, wanting to do some scientific type experiments and approaches to the subject, but I'd like somebody scientifically qualified, or at least in academia, to assist, so that we can put it over in the right way, and we can address what we're doing correctly. Otherwise, we're going to get shot down in flames as being what we would be, amateurish. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Les. Appreciated. So any help like that, and I mean, I would take advice. I won't be some kind of it's my way or no way. If somebody's got the knowledge, I'm willing to listen.
Brilliant, that, Paul. And I'll let you carry on with the show, guys.
Yeah, well, what we've done, I mean, we've talked about Alan Godfrey's sighting and a few others, but let's jump into a recent sighting, your own sighting, Russ. This is interesting, people. Let's, if you don't mind telling us about it.
No, absolutely not. So we're only going back a few days to the 2nd of March, which is not too long ago at all. And like I've said online and wherever, over the past few months, I took voluntary redundancy from my job with Royal Mail back in June or May last year. And that's obviously given me a lot more time to spend on the subject. And, you know, I've been trolling Paul really deep down. I've been following what he's been doing, finding it fascinating that so much has been going on around, you know, the Wolds area and Benton and the East Yorkshire itself. And it's not too far away from where I live. It's an hour's drive. And I've found myself on a night time getting out there and finding one or two of the nice park up places to sit and have a cup of coffee and just ponder the night sky and keep your eyes open to what's going on. And it was on one such night, on the 2nd, that I'd got out. I was on the A614, I think it is, isn't it, Paul, which is the route from Market Wheaton out. I think it goes towards Beverley and Driffield. And there's a few parking spaces, like I say, that I've found, and there's quite a good lay-by on this one that gives you, on your driver's side, and just looking out the window there, you can see for miles over flatland going out towards Bridlington, Hull, that sort of area. What had happened earlier that evening at the conjunction between Saturn and Venus spotted outside my local club, and I'd managed to take a photograph on my phone. Wasn't the best one. So I thought that'd be interesting. Find a nice piece of clear sky to get a good photograph of that. Didn't happen. As I'm sat there, what was it, 10 to 4 in the morning? Something like that. I'm parked up, and about 350 yards up the road is a roundabout. Now, I've just dug the name of this roundabout out for you, Paul. On the actual sat-nav, it came up as Kilpin Kilpin Coats Road.
Kipling Coats, I think it is.
Yeah. So that's the roundabout. That's the crossroads where this thing happened. Now there's hedgerows up both sides of the roundabout, up to the roundabout. A slight bend over to the left-hand side. So just kind of just into your view a little bit right. You can't see all the roundabout, you can see the junction. And I'm looking up there and I could see orange flashing lights on the road coming from the right-hand side of the roundabout. So this again is what, 350 yards away from where I was. And I'm thinking, is it tow truck? Somebody broke down, the construction traffic. It's really strange this time of the morning, but these things happen. And I'm watching, and these lights I could see them through the hedgerow, but there was also 2 or 3 of them above the hedgerow, not high up in the sky, but clearly above the hedgerow. So I'm thinking, it's a big vehicle. Excuse me. Could it be a wagon? You know, you see wagons, the drivers decorate them up with all sorts of lights everywhere and what have you. Thinking no more about it, but it's still there, and it's stopped. It hadn't stopped. The lights were still moving, but it wasn't going anywhere, if you like. And then you could make out it had come around the corner slightly and coming onto the carriageway that was facing me. And again, it seemed like these lights were swirling round each other. Number-wise, it's hard to say. It's like 12, maybe nine big ones, and then little lights in between them. And to try and explain what it looked like, I thought about joggers wearing bracelets on their arms, you know, nighttime runners. We do have them out here. I don't know whether you get them out in East Yorkshire, but there are people go out running late at night in the early hours, and they wear these bracelets that flash. And it looked like a congregation of people that could be just moving and talking. Again, wasn't making any sense. Excuse me. And then this thing came into view as a big grid of these lights, and I'm thinking, oh, it's a wagon. Oh, hang on a minute. No headlights, no side lights, all I can see, no windscreen.
And it's coming towards you, so you would see.
It's coming towards you. You'd have to see the lights, even if it was something.
Gritter.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Reversing round back to me, you see red lights, nothing. Yeah. So my phone's plugged into the car, listening to some podcasts on the radio in the car. I grabbed my phone, unplugged it, gets in man, gets out of the car, and there's a lot of these things have just fizzled out. Not gone anywhere, left or right, up or down. There's nothing in the sky. Now I'm thinking, I'm going to look for this. Straight starts the engine up, shoots up the road, up to the roundabout, did a left, did a right, went straight forward, 150 yards either direction, looking in the fields, looking everywhere. These roads, Paul will tell you can see for miles in a straight line.
Yeah.
There was nothing. There was absolutely nothing to be seen. Not a cyclist, not a person, not a tractor, not nothing. What they are, Paul, I have no idea. But people keep reporting these strange lights over the ocean, over the world. I've seen them.
It really does sound like you've seen something similar to that, Russ, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Have you got plans to go up there again? I mean, that tells you something, people. Dedication, 4 o'clock in the morning, sat out there. It never leaves a person, does it?
No, it doesn't. Yeah, I'll be out there again, don't you? But I mean,
you'll have to give us a shout because I'll have a run up. I definitely will, and it'd be interesting. I mean, obviously we'll not get the place flooded with people, but it'd be interesting to get a few more eyes in this particular area because you're in the zone, and like you've said, you can see for miles, literally full 360, can't you?
Yeah.
It's a great sighting, and I loved it because I've got a message waiting for me the next morning saying I think I've just seen the lights that Paul Sinclair's always on about, which was it was nice that you thought about that, Russ. So
straight away,
before we move on to some cases, I'm just curious, and this is for my own personal information. Do you hold any information on lectures from Tony Dodd or anything still?
Not really, no.
No.
Excuse me. Got
Do
a
you need a
tickle.
drink of water? Do you need a drink of water, Russ? If you do,
I'll just go get a drink. Give us 30 seconds.
yeah, do that. That's all good. And the reason I ask people is because, as Les will tell you, in the making of Wolflands, we've featured a bit of Tony's work by a researcher that supplied us with some information, and any other information would be welcome. So if anybody out there's got a little bit of this from the 1990s, early 2000s, you know, would be welcome. It would be highly welcome. If you've got any questions for us in the chat, and providing he's not choking too much, we welcome it. But we'll just give him a minute, and I'm sure he'll be back. You're all right, mate. No worries.
I'm having a pint.
It's no good sat there, is it? Feeling uncomfortable, you know. No. So you've done the best thing.
No, so Tony Dodd, one person who will help you out well is David Caton.
Okay.
Oh, it's contagious. You can name it now.
Oh, Russell's got it now, yeah.
Yeah. David Caton's your man.
Okay, right. I shall reach out to David Caton. We have spoke over years, but it's it'd be a great guy to have on live stream, actually. You know, interesting with the background in the animal fatalities, should we say. So, Russ, if you've recovered your voice, are you okay?
Yeah, I think so.
Right. Let's talk about some notable cases that you've looked into during your years within UFO Data Magazine, UFO Magazine, and things that have stayed with you. We can touch on Rendlesham, we can touch on anything you want.
Yeah, I mean, the biggie that Graham was working on all the time I was with him, really, was the alien autopsy.
Right. Okay.
Now, you know, Philip Mantle's the go-to guy for this. But Graham and Philip knew each other. And Graham had a file like this on Ray Santilli. And again, I mean, we were both very doubtful that it was anything but fakery. Of course it was. And I mean, there's people out there, there's a website out there now, isn't there, that's still bleating on about it being the real McCoy and arguing everything says and anybody else says. I don't know, but I'm having a bit of fun, sorry.
You're all right. Just take your time. I'm
bit of a tickle.
Well, I'll tell you what. Well, do you want a minute, and I'll talk about something? Yeah. Just have a minute, Russ.
Have a minute. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Has any more? Right. Yes, David Caton. Get David Caton on T-Note says. I think it's a good idea. I mean, David's been involved in looking into what's been happening to livestock all around the UK and the world for many years. So if people would like to get David on, I'll reach out. Or if anybody's got any contacts for him and you want to speak to him on our behalf, please do. And poor old Russ is suffering there, isn't he? But there's no rush here back for this. I haven't got any contingency people for this. I can't think of what to say. Oh, yeah. Black cat sighting that we put on the website, onto the YouTube stream earlier this week. Les put it on. And me and the little dog, we went and... Oh, Les is at it now. They're all coughing. we went to Boynton just a few days ago after snowfall. Basically... bit of a wild goose chase. Somebody had reported seeing the cat, and I knew that this particular area at the bottom, it's where the Gypsy Race runs, which is quite a famous stream that runs through East Yorkshire. It runs past Willie Howe, the burial mound, where all strange things have been reported. And the Gypsy Race is known in local sort of terms as woe waters, because there's lots of strange things happening around the Gypsy Race allegedly over the years. So we walked along the Gypsy Race at Boynton, just in the off chance that we might find some prints. And I say we, as though I can talk to my little dog, but he's my best friend when I go out, so that's what I do. And I realise Paul's rambling here while I'm just hoping that Russ has recovered his voice. Any good, mate?
I think so.
Yeah, so where were we?
Yeah, so we're talking about cases that we covered. probably the biggest one that people remember UFO magazine was for would be the secret
Oh, the
NASA
Ray
transmissions.
Oh, right, the
Yeah.
NASA. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, you know, Ray Santilli was, for all in question, he was a con man really, but he made money out of people, and
Yeah.
I just say more fool the people who paid him because they did it without, again, any real evidence that what he was selling them was the truth.
Yeah.
And they never got a piece of film to test. They never got anything other than his word. And they paid a fortune. And yeah, a lot of money passed hands. I mean, we did something after UFO magazine, or did UFO Data for a couple of years. And we produced a little documentary about the original story behind the alien autopsy, which was it alien autopsy, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it's tongue in cheek, but it's the actual guys who worked the job for Santilli prior to Spiros being involved and making the proper movie. And he was trying all sorts of things to get some alien footage right, you know what I mean? And he wasn't happy with what they did, so that's when he went to Spiros and John Humphreys and paid a lot of money to get the film made. That's by the by. Secret NASA was another one that Jack Casher, Dr. Jack Casher from, to forget which university it was in the States, had actually made comment on the old STS-48 footage where he was adamant that they were shooting missiles at UFOs from Earth. And he'd done his calculations and said that this was definitely alien. This was actually not alien, but spacecraft being attacked by missiles. Then, of course, you get super skeptic from NASA, James Oberg, coming online, and he's arguing the fact that these are all ice particles.
Ice particles, yeah.
When the jets go off on the shuttle to keep it in position, then these things are shooting all over the place. And
where do you stand on that then, Russ?
You've got to look at what Oberg came out with, because if you look into the background and some of the detail that James Oberg produced, every action on the space shuttle's recorded. Everything has got a monitor, you know, how many times they breathe an hour, how many times they go to the toilet, how many lights they've got on. And every time the jets are fired, it triggers. It's like the black box on an aircraft. And James Oberg got the readings out from these things and the timeline and laid it across the video. And of course, as these things shoot off into space, then a second or so before, the rockets are fired. Just the rockets have been firing. And he said this was the case, that this is what it was. Anyway, more and more stuff started being shown on the internet, because at the time, NASA TV was just an open channel that was sent around all the cable networks in America. It was just, it was there, it was in the background. It was like the elevator music channel, if you like. Whenever something was going on at NASA, the live feed was just sent out. No, you know, no advertising, nothing like that, just a link. It's not the case now. That people started recording this stuff and people were seeing anomalous events. And that's where Martin Stubbs came on board with us. Martin, what a character. He actually managed one of the small cable TV stations that covered a place called Bowen Island in Vancouver. And they took the NASA feed. It was one of the things they used to put on during the night, you know, when the programming had finished, they'd just go to NASA TV till 6 o'clock in the morning. And he started recording, and he's not just recording one or two tapes, he recorded thousands of hours.
And he was actually catching something that was anomalous.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And he managed to provide us with good quality video of the things that have been seen already and shown a bit roughly, if you like, on the internet. But then he started giving us other stuff. And it ended up with me going over to Bowen Island to meet up with him. And this was done on behalf of the Phenomena exhibition, which was something that UFO Magazine were providing boards, posters, videos for a company in Australia. they got to hear about the NASA transmissions and said, right, get yourself off over there and get the tapes, sort of thing. So I spent a week with Martin recording his tapes, getting the stuff, getting the stories, interviewing him. And it was fantastic. You know, we got together a really good program. I think it's the best one we ever did. It left a lot of people wondering if there is something out there. We got quotes from astronauts, from people who've been in space, who had their own feelings, who, you know, going back to the very early days, to the Gemini 7 days, the original Right Stuff astronauts, Scott Carpenter, John Glenn. Scott Carpenter sat there at a reunion back in, I think it was about 1992, when they still had the old Mercury 7. The old 7 astronauts were there, Gordon Cooper, etc. And if you remember, John Glenn actually spoke in the transmissions when he was doing his first, he didn't even do a full orbit, didn't John Glenn? It was just a up and down. He could see fireflies. He said, I could see fireflies out of what looked like fireflies out of the capsule windows. Well, we talked about this. There's been just bits of the heat shield burning off, etc. Bits of dust, bits of ice that the capsule carried with it. By the by, Scott Carpenter actually said, even after John Glenn's first flight, NASA weren't sure whether, and he termed it, whether there were critters, he said. Living critters out there in space. He says, we just didn't know. So you've got to say that NASA have probably had an interest in that from day one. And with a quote like that, if you take it in the context, you think they'd be investigating that sort of thing. Are they still investigating it today?
You would think they probably are. I would think they would have to do, even if it's, well, it is sort of without our knowledge, if it's happening.
Yeah.
So when you're looking into things like this, and you go and speak to people, you've got these, you're privy to these clear quality bits of footage, like you said, they roughed it up a bit when they put it out there. Have you ever been warned, or nothing like that? Or
yeah. Well, this is where things start to become a little bit more. It's not a case of the men in black with the black hats and the sunglasses walking up and knocking on your door and threatening to bury your bones in the desert. Excuse me, none of that. But let's take it to when we took Hyder Massan asked us to show some of the secret NASA footage at a big conference he was doing in Acapulco back in Christmas 1999. We weren't releasing this until March because Graham and I had been invited to Laughlin to the big UFO Congress there. We wanted to launch the secret NASA transmissions in their back garden. Wanted to do it in America. Anyway, we agreed to take some stuff to Acapulco, like you would. Acapulco sounded interesting and it's very nice. Thank you very much. God, you think you've done well in this country if you get 200 people in an audience, you know, for a conference. This conference hall in Acapulco, there must have been 1,500 people in that. All absolute UFO nuts, you know. Think of what you want of Jaime Maussan, and I'll save a lot of my stories from Jaime for another day. But we showed the stuff. It was well received. It was well accepted. We're on our way home. And we go from Acapulco to Mexico City to Paris, Paris back to Leeds. So you can't check your luggage right through from Acapulco. You've got to do it from Mexico City. So we get to Mexico. There's only one flight out to Air France. That's ours. We're about 4 hours early. So we go to the desk. There's a young girl kicking around. So, look, is there any chance we can check our cases through? Because we've got 4 hours to kill, don't we? I'll check. So she goes behind the screen, and this guy in a suit comes out. He didn't have Air France on his lapels or anything like that, but very well spoken, broken French, English accent. Said, could he help us? And we explained the situation. Give me 5 minutes. So he scooted off, give me your passports and give me 5 minutes. 15 minutes later, he comes back, me and Graham sat there. Yes, that's okay. You can check in now. We'll send your cases straight through to Leeds Bradford. Good. Do that. Go for a cup of tea. Going up this escalator, there's like 2 escalators going up side by side up to the restaurant level. It's a massive airport. This guy who we'd seen at the desk is on the escalator behind us with a colleague. Okay, think nothing of it. Sit down, have a cup of tea. They sit down, have a cup of tea. We have a sandwich, whatever. Half an hour passes. We go down to the duty-free shops, whatever, looking round. And I tell you, Paul, it's like if you can imagine somebody with a copy at Daily Mirror with 2 holes cut in it, looking at you they were watching us. Some people might think, well, that's because you wanted to check your cases in early. They're making sure you're staying there and not running away and putting a bomb on the plane. It's long before 9/11 is this, don't forget, the security was lax. People carrying television sets and almost chickens onto the planes, you know what I mean? It's that going back into Mexico. Anyhow, we get to the gate, time to leave. Gets there about 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes before we get on the plane. Who stood at the actual ticket desk but this guy? So going through and sitting there. They're watching us, mate. They're keen on what we're doing. We get to the gate and he actually named us. He said, Mr. Callaghan, Mr. Burtle, safe journey. And I had me, like you have a bag, I had a bag on my side and I just patted my bag and winked at him. And I thought, yeah, if you've been looking through our cases for something, all the tapes are in here. You know what I mean? If that's what it was. If they knew who we were and what we've been doing. Anyway, gets back to Leeds Bradford, wait for the cases. Graham's case, tunnels through, grabs it, mine won't be long. Never turned up. So I go down to service air and tell them my case is missing. Okay, we'll get it up on next flight, we'll find it and get it. Yep, fine, like they do. 3 days I'm ringing them up, where's my case? We can't find it. 4 days. No, I'm sorry, we still haven't got it. About 5, 6 days after, I got a phone call. We've located your case, it'll be in Leeds at 5:30 tonight. Can we bring it to you? He says, yeah, bring it to office. They ring me up at 5:30, it's not arrived. Anyway, the next day, sure enough, my case turned up at the officers in Ilkley. And thinking nothing about it, I opens the case up to see what's in there. And there were a present for wife, my mucky washing, if you like. There was an NTSC to PAL converter that had taken, because we had to do that to show them the videos that we brought. Another bit of electrical equipment in there, a camera. Missing. There was a bottle, a Polo aftershave, and a brand new Marks and Spencer shirt missing out of the case. I'm thinking, you buggers, you know, what have you done to anyway? And then I looked at the case and I realised when I opened the case, there was some metal leather tags on the zip, and there was 2 wraparound, you know, like the bracelets you get round the luggage. What did it say on them? Moscow. What? My cases have been to Moscow. Now, Moscow, not Manchester. We weren't travelling to Manchester. We were travelling to LBA. How do you confuse Moscow with Leeds and Bradford Airport? But my cases, mate, had gone to Moscow. And there's some Politburo there who smells lovely and walking around in a nice shirt. But that's by the by. What were they after? Were they looking for what we had? Now, you might think we're on a high horse with that. But a few days later, me and Graham were working one Sunday afternoon. I think it was Sunday or Saturday. We get a knock on the door, and this quite smart gentleman walks in. I said, "Oh, but I'm a reader." He says, "I've just come out with wife for a day out with Ilkley," he says. And I said, "Oh, we're going to call and see if there are anybody in offices. Do you mind?" He said, "No, what can we do?" He says, "Oh, I'm just so fascinated." He says, "That secret NASA stuff. Brilliant." He says, "Have you got any footage? Can I have a look?" I said, "Yeah, come in, sit down." We made him a cup of coffee, had a chat like you do, shut up. I said, "Fantastic, this." Anyway, as we finished off, I said, Graham said, "Have you got a business card, mate?" And I said, "Put your number in me." But yeah. I said, "Oh, I'll put one in my file as well, like you do." And he fumbled about and got another one out and said his goodbyes and what have you. And then I goes over to Graham with this card and said, "Here, put it in with yours, keep them together." And they were different. On the card that Graham had, this guy's name, and I can't for life in me, I've got it written down somewhere, I can't for life in me remember his actual name, but he had letters behind his name. And there were a motif, an emblem on the bottom of the card. And we looked all this up, and the letters referred to him as a Knight of St. John. Well, the Knights of St. John are the actual official protectors of the Pope. Now, we've been in Mexico, and I forgot to mention this. One of the big events of that Mexico conference was Father Corrado Balducci appearing on a live link with Michael Esserman, talking about the Vatican's two telescopes, and the Catholic Church firmly believe that when God created man, he didn't just create man, he created everything. And they're quite happy with the fact that UFOs should be revered, if you like. They are part of the big picture. This guy who come to see the secret master transmissions was actually part of the secret police, if you like, of the Vatican. Now, how do you explain that? Take that away from.
It's a fascinating one.
Yeah, people have been around us.
Yeah, well, without a doubt, and it's because of the stones that you were lifting. To be honest, Russ,
I've got the tags and everything from the Moscow flight. I keep them if ever I do a lecture, and on the show them as a little bit of evidence.
Just to back up what you're saying.
Yeah, but we kept them.
So, moving on, I know you're interested in, because we've got about 30 minutes left. I know you're interested in the triangles, the black triangles, and you've looked into them. You've done a bit of research. What are your views? The 1990s, 1980s.
I think the Belgium stuff is the most important that we've had. It's a difficult one because there's very little video evidence about the Belgium triangles, but the reports were coming from police officers. They were seeing these huge triangles, football field size aircraft that could hover. The radar tapes were released, of course. Charles de Broe, was it? The General de Broe, who released showing these things climbing at fantastic speeds. I've actually got a clip that we used on UFOs Hard Evidence 1. One thing that Tony Dodd did do, he managed to locate one of the pilots of the aircraft that were sent out to intercept, and he spoke to the pilot whose radar image is the one that you see on all the TV programs. Right. And that was quite interesting to listen to, although he said he never saw the object. Every time he tried to lock onto it on radar, he couldn't. It avoided it if it were off, but he could see it on radar. That's one of the things that leaves a little bit of doubt in my mind with some of the, these like the Tic Tac stuff that's coming out now. Everything you've seen from Tic Tac is infrared.
Yeah, I'll just explain. It leaves a little bit of doubt. Why?
Has there been anything that what they were filming, what de Broe released, and what the police are reporting are two different things.
Right.
That's where I stand on that. I think there were certainly people who described these huge triangles at the time. And then we had the Cosford incident, of course, which Nick Pope has dined out on for years and years and years. But that was a big incident. And have you had Jason Gleaves on your show, Paul?
Do you know, you're talking about Cosford's incident, Russell, that name just comes straight into my head.
Yeah.
Because I'd love to get Jason on to talk about the Cosford incident.
Yeah, because Jason would actually, I don't think he ever saw the object, but he was there at the time. He were based at Cosford when it happened. So yeah, that's another one that's leading us up, I suppose, to the Calvine thing, isn't it? It's bringing us into that sort of direction. But excuse me, so much has come out in the last 3 months that's taken 33 years
Yeah.
to
So
come
give
out.
people a background on the photograph.
Well, let's go back to the 1990s and the Cosford incident.
Yep.
People mustn't forget Nick Pope's claims to be working at the MOD, and then the newspaper and media's claims that he was the MOD's head honcho for UFOs. And Nick's tenure in the UFO desk that he actually run was 2 years, right? 1993 to 1995, I believe it was. That's a long time ago, but there's still, you know, yes, he retired as a civil servant from the MOD. I'm not going to knock Nick. He's over-exaggerated his claims to what he did. There's a paper trail that shows that he wasn't as important as everybody makes out, but that's by the by. Nick had a thing about the subject. Once he got into that position, when he saw a few reports, something excited him about the subject. And one of the big reports that happened while he was at the MOD doing that job was the Cosford incident.
Right. Okay.
But what he talks about, you know, I'm not telling people how to suck eggs, is that on the wall of the place where his desk was, his office, was a photograph of the Calvine image, this
Yep.
diamond-shaped object in broad daylight with a Harrier jet at the side of it. Now, one or two things came back and shot him in the foot again. This was a full-colour blow-up of the image, blah, blah, blah. When Dr. David Clark and his Disclosure Project, and Dr. David Clark, let me tell you, is no person who walks around with a foil hat on. David is a very, very good researcher. He's an intelligent guy. He's a lecturer in journalism at Sheffield and Hallam University, but he's also been interested in folklore, UFOs, etc., all his life. And he's come up, so much so he was trusted by the MOD to be the custodian of the release of the documents as they've done that over the past few years. And David's been well involved there. So he knows his way around Kew, where the archives are. He knows what's in there, etc. And it was David Clark's fortuitous work, if you like, that managed to get almost to the bottom of the Calvine incident by a bit of good journalistic research, coming across a name that turned out to be Craig Lindsay, who was actually the desk officer up at the airbase up there at the time when the Calvine incident happened. Craig was run by the Scottish Daily Record, which was the newspaper where the quick story is two young lads out for a hike in the Highlands, come across this object, manage to take 6 photographs of it, and send the photograph to the local, not local, but national newspaper, the Scottish Daily Record. Now, the Daily Record, like what they see, they need a quote from the military. So they get in touch with Craig Lindsay. Craig Lindsay likes what he sees and realises it's above his pay grade. He should be sending this down to London. So he photocopies one of the prints that they've sent him and sends this down to the MOD in London. Now, if anybody's seen this black and white picture of the UFO with the aircraft in books, etc., you know, just a really rough photocopy, this is that image. This is the image that ended up in the files, the National Archives. Anyway, Craig keeps a copy of this, the photograph, puts it in a drawer at home, forgets about it basically. There's 6 other images, they go missing. MOD say they sent them back. We can see a memo where they've claimed they've sent them back to the Scottish Daily Record. The Scottish Daily Record never got them back. Interesting thing there, Endel Stevens, I think it was, who was the editor of the Scottish Daily Press, Scottish Daily Record at the time. Bless him, he's gone now. But he also sat on the D-Notice Committee, which will get the conspiracy theories otted up because he had the power to say yes or no or suggest that stories were dropped. The story never ran, and everybody forgot about it. But Nick Pope used to talk about the fact that this thing was there. Anyway, David Clark comes across Craig Lindsay's name during his research, and he gives him a ring. And Craig's well retired now, is an older gentleman, lovely fella. He's been waiting for somebody to ring me. 30 odd years I've been sat here.
He's got
Because
the
you'll want to
pictures.
see it. Yeah, he says, to see what? He says, well, I've got the photograph. Right. So off goes David to Scotland. The story then is the photograph's got, everybody's seen it now. Written on the back of the photograph is the name of the photographer, copyright, so. But David has never released that because he didn't have permission to do that. This is why the thoughts are that there's not much about the Calvine incident in the National Archive, because it would identify the witness, and because we've got all this GDP, whatever it is now, you know, with you protecting your rights. By the by, some people will say that's BS and that they just want to hide it, and I tend to agree with them. But David also had a contact within the MOD who had told David that, look, yeah, I've seen these images. He says, there were 6 images, he said, but I've seen the roll of film. He said, they didn't just send 6 photographs to the record, they sent the film. And the record actually processed the film in-house. So they've seen them all. And he says, my own thoughts to the reason why the photographer won't come forward, even now, is that because some of those photographs showed that they've been poaching. There was photographs of the kill. Now, I don't know what they were poaching, whether it were deer, salmon, pheasant, whatever. But allegedly they were out there being naughty boys. They were only young lads. They worked in the hotels. And again, what's his name? Mr. I've got another name for you here. Matthew Ilsley is actually part of David Clark's disclosure team. He's up in Scotland and he's been digging, and it's Matthew who's released the name of the photographer to the Daily Record. The Daily Record have then just recently, in the last few days, published a full feature story with a photograph of the guy from back in 1990, and Kevin Russell's his name. So people are trying now to find Kevin Russell to get him at long last to come forward and tell us, is this the real McCoy? Did you make it? Whatever it is, if he's watching this, if somebody knows him, Kevin, just come forward. Nobody's going to lock you up for nicking a salmon 33 years ago. Let's be honest about
my
it.
exact thoughts when you were saying that. Yeah.
Nobody's going to berate you for it. Just let's know. Now, the thing about it is, again, with UFO, we're pretty sure it's not a UFO. We're pretty confident that it's some sort of military aircraft that's being tested. The thing is, people are saying that, well, we haven't got that technology now. The guys are saying it hovered there and then shot off. It was followed by or observed by this Harrier. We haven't got that sort of technology. And I have to agree, we've not seen it in 30 odd years. We've not got an aircraft that can hover silently and scoot off at a great rate of knots. Now, something that's come up over the last few days again, and again, it's trolling the internet and keeping an eye on different things. This brings me to, I'm not going to be doubtful on the case. What I'm going to say, I think the guy is right. There's a podcaster called Professor Holland, or Ask the Professor. Now, this guy...
Yeah, I've seen the guy. Excellent. Yeah. I don't mind giving him a plug. Excellent podcast.
Yeah, he's like Doc Brown, isn't he? The mad scientist, the nutty professor. He's a bit of everything.
But he knows his stuff.
He knows his stuff. And he used to be a producer for the BBC. He used to produce Horizon. So science is his background. Have a look for his latest podcast. I've actually put the soundtrack of it on my blog. So if you have a look at uforust.co.uk, you can pick it up. It's 13 minutes long. And he was talking about stealth material and the search for the ideal stealth technology, coatings for aircraft and what have you. and he comes back to the thing that the place where this sort of stuff was happening in this country was Warton, British aerospace base, just outside Lancashire. If anybody knows, if you pass it, I think it's on the old A6. You go past, there's actually a British aerospace lightning on the gate, the gate guardian, looking like absolutely fantastic. But they actually, well, what I'm coming to, people and researchers have said that at the time, in 1990, there was nowhere that RAF Harriers could have got to Pitlochry at that time as fast reaction. Two things.
But there's some debate. There's some debate on even if that's a Harrier.
Yeah, well, it could be the Sea Hunter, couldn't it, or something like that. It doesn't have to be the jump jet version, but the jump jet version, very limited range. It's only about 400 miles,
right?
Without the wing pods on and what have you. But anyway, the prof has dug deep into this, and British Aerospace Warton actually owned 2 Harriers for their own research. Now, think about flying a Harrier from Lancashire up to Pitlochry. It's about 190 miles. It's 20 minutes, 15 minutes. They're up there in no time at all. And what he's suggesting, and people I've got to say to you, I think it's a very relevant thing. He's suggesting that what the lads came across was an inflatable covered in this stealth material, and the Harrier was there doing the radar checks on it. Now, what he suggests is that the way the boys described what happened, that this thing wasn't flying, it was tethered down in the valley. It was a balloon of some sort, a dirigible. And he says, if you think about it, it took off at great speed and went straight up. What would happen if you lost control of it or the cable broke?
Cut the tether.
Yeah. Off it goes. Silently, nothing. Right? But again, it's putting that technology, it's giving an answer for why we haven't seen it yet. But actually, we probably have seen it as coatings on aircraft, on other things. And to put the 2 Harriers from Lancashire, it's close, isn't it? It's a close thing.
So to jump from that then, back to the triangles, and then we'll see if there's a few questions. I think he's got some questions. So just say a really quick yes or no answer. The triangles, are they ours or are they from somewhere else? Just quick
answer.
Ours,
Paul. Think they're ours.
Okay. Right. Fair. Les, questions, please, if you've got any.
Yes, thanks for that, Russ. Some great background info on the Kelvin photographs there. Right then, I've got a question from... Oh, by the way, I've got to start off by saying thank you, Lee Roscoe. Thank you again for a super chat contribution to the channel. Always welcome, and thank you very much. Right, so I've got a question from B. Foy. Russ,
Bryn.
Do you remember...
Hello, Bryn.
Yeah, Bryn, is it? Yeah, I've just got B here. Yeah, so do you remember the letter that Santilli sent Graham Birdsall when we were in the office?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I can't bring it to mind. I know he sent him a bottle of wine with an alien stood on a flying saucer steps, weeing out of the steps. I think it was actually alien wee with the wine, the beers. I remember that one. I don't think we can get Bryn on chat, can we? Was it about money, Bryn? Was it about offering Graham so much money if he could prove him wrong? If Bryn comes back to us on that one.
He'll put it in the chat, I guess.
Yes or a no, Bryn, if you can do that, and we'll move to another question then.
Fred, thanks. Fred Flintstone. I want to hear the stories about Jamie Mawson. Do you know anything? I don't know Jamie Mawson.
I think he means Jaime Maussan.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't really.
We need another show, mate.
We need another show. I was about to say that, Russell, probably. Yeah. And let's have a look then. Chris M. He says, I'm assuming it's a man. We don't know. Maybe get the drone up if the snow's a decent depth. I think he's talking about your experiences here, Paul.
We're on about
in the next, the next few days, Paul. Great opportunity to spot a few prints,
we may
maybe
get some snow. Yeah, good
in
idea.
the snow of these any alleged cats, big cat roamings.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and I've got a question from what do you think this is from? It's from the Outer Limits magazine, and it's from
I don't know, Chris.
And he's asking, what is Russ's opinion on the claims that have made I'll read it verbatim, as I've got it here. What is your opinions on the claim that made early NASA flights and those made of aliens on the moon said to be said by Neil Armstrong? I don't know how to put that another way.
I can translate from Coded. What he's saying to me, what do I think about the fact that there's a recording of Neil Armstrong
saying aliens were on the moon?
We can see them on the far side of the moon. That was proven as a hoax about 20 years ago, that it was done by a Japanese researcher. And if you listen to the actual recording, the voice is like, it's like Neil Armstrong's got an accent, shall we say, from Arkansas, and it's like somebody from Scotland being dubbed into it. The voice is totally different. I don't hold much out on that. Yes, the medical channel thing, they could talk about private things. You know, you don't everybody want to know if you've done something in your suit or something like that, because there's actual recordings of that available online. Anyway,
right.
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think that.
Just a quick one, because I know Les has got some more questions, but I just saw a question come up. Joan Thomas says, the triangles, do you believe they're our own? Just a yes or a no. Are they UK or are they USA or some other? Your opinion?
Like Concord, isn't it? Joint ventures between everybody, you know.
Excellent. Yep.
Right, yeah.
I'm just shooting from Russ, because we've literally
I think you're doing me out of a job there, Paul.
No, sorry, Les. What next question?
That was my next question on my list. What?
Apologies. So
Sky has kindly sent me through. Now, funnily enough, that's the last question I've ever got through from Sky tonight. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No worries. There. Just a few quick fire questions then. And I know these are going to be yes or no answers, or just about. Have you ever seen a ghost?
I'll say no.
Okay. Let's have a look. So I've wrote these down. Have you ever investigated poltergeist activity?
No, but I know quite a few interesting stories that we'll say for another time. You talk about have I ever seen a ghost, Paul? I'll give one thing, and then again, it's something we can probably cover if we do this again. I was back in 1978, 79, when I worked on the buses. A pal of mine used to be the secretary at the local spiritualist church, and he knew my interest in UFOs. I knew his interest in the other side, and I used to go with him. Found it fascinating, but these places were full of local people, 90% women, who were the same women who went every week and who did the readings, who knew everything about everybody anyway. So that sort of told me that this was just gossip. But then he asked me if I'd like to go see this lady called Queenie Nixon. Trip out to Barnsley. He says, it's a bit special, this one. He says, I think you're ready for it. She's a transfiguration medium. I went to Barnsley, and I'll go to the story at another time in full time. But what I saw that night is something that, if it's trickery, it's the best I've ever seen. If it's manipulation, it's the best I've ever seen. What I saw was a physical change in a person, not once, not twice, but maybe 40 or 50 times through the course of an evening. And that was a wake-up call, because then, yes, something triggered in my mind. You know, the story, I think you probably heard the story about, again, we talk about ghosts. Being out for a drive with the girlfriend at the time, we called into a club. for a drink. It was hot. The club happened to be where my mum and dad used to live, if you like. I'd not been in there from being 3-year-old, 4-year-old, as a kid in the pram. I was 22 at the time. We'd gone in there. They were playing bingo in the big room, so we didn't want to disturb that. We sat in this little lounge area, just had a quick half each. This lad came through the doors and just come straight to me. There was nobody else in the place, in the room where we were. Are you Russell? Yeah. He says, oh, your mum's on phone. Well, my mum died 2 years previous to that. And I went to the phone. It was one of these with a big acoustic hood over it. Put my head in there, picked the phone up, and all I could hear was... And that made the hairs, I did have hair in them days, stand up like nobody's business. How the hell he knew my name? And if it were my mum, hi mum. That's the closest thing to ghosts I can tell you.
And it's unusual in a place that they used to frequent as well.
Yeah.
So what about missing time? I'll just check and see whether Les has got out to add to this before, because we're just about winding up now. So.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Paul. Yeah, you know how much stick I get if I don't answer the questions that are on here. So there is a couple more. John Thomas is asking, Russ, you said triangles are ours earlier on. U.S. military, are the U.S. military or our own, do you think?
Yeah, we sort of answered that, didn't we? I think there's a bit of a joint effort between the powers that be. I think one side should be worried. I think it's a sharing of technology. I think it's a case of it's not proven technology. I think it's something that might need refining, that we haven't got it quite right yet, hence the sightings come and go. Just on a right quick note, something that people might find a bit strange, a bit funny, but something I draw a resemblance to on the triangles. If you're a television watcher, Midsummer Murders did a program called The Incident at Cooper's Hill. And it really sort of sheds a light on the flying triangle situation. There were reports of a flying triangle being seen over, Midsummer. Yes, there was a flying triangle out there. Yes, there was a military base there. And it was actually turned out in the storyline to be an experimental craft that had been put away in a lockup, and because it didn't work, and the kids had come a bit later on and rebuilt it and fitted it with GPS, and then it did work, and it was quite a good storyline. It's just something that's totally out of the UFO, but it's like everything you've ever heard about triangle incidents. It's worth a watch.
It's fascinating though, Russ. I mean, and I'm not saying that they're not ours, because I've got no idea either way, but you've said it's technology that didn't quite work right, but they've been testing it since God knows when. Yeah. And we talk about it evading aircraft, evading the top aircraft of the day. We talk about it being a football field size that can hover. It worked fairly well from the descriptions that we're given.
Sure, but it's just the fact that the sightings just come and go. And if we've got something that big and that powerful, you're not going to fly it once every 3 years, are you? People are going to see these things. People are going to see these things falling. I'd love to see one. Point. I'd love to see one myself.
Okay, on that note, I'm going to hand it to Les. First of all, Russ. I thought he's got another question.
Yeah, I've got one final question to finish this, and it's the one that came from Lorraine Groves earlier on in the stream. Russ, is there something that you would like to experience that you haven't yet? I know you've talked about travelling around the world a few years ago. Is there anything you'd like to experience that you haven't yet? A quick fire question, this one, Russ.
Yeah, I think I'd like to go into space like a lot of us would. I think I'd love to spend me £2 million wisely and have a 10-minute ride into space. But yeah, one day, not in our lifetime, one day it'll become the norm, won't it?
Would you say Elon Musk?
Yeah, it's fabulous.
Yeah. Okay.
Russ, it's been a pleasure speaking. I hope we can do it again.
Good. Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much. And I shall end it from myself there and hand you over to Les. Thank you very much from Truth Proof. Thank you.
Yeah, and okay, thank you very much. I'll swap over to my cam. I think I'm on. Yeah, and I've got to say thank you to Russ, to Paul and his guest Russ tonight. Some fascinating stories from Russ's early life, and obviously all the investigations he's done in between now. Thank you very much. It's been an honour to have you on, Russ. I've got to say thanks to everybody who's come into the chat tonight and supported the channel, and without fault, a lot of you people, you come in week after week after week, and we hope we're getting some good guests on, and we've got some good guests coming as well, Paul, haven't we? If
we
still
there,
there,
we have
yeah,
now. We have
yeah.
Yeah,
We've got some good guests, and I've just got to remind people. Yeah, thank you. And I've just got to remind people that at 15 minutes past the hour of this show, you should get a notification for a new video from Truth Proof, Paul Sinclair, and that'll be on at 15 minutes past now. On that note, then, all I can say is thanks to Skyflower for doing the moderating tonight, and thanks for Paul and Russ. And it just leaves me to say good night. See you next time. Bye.